Hi everybody. Again, my name is Rabbi Ari Goldstein. Probably you may know this, but to my right, but to everyone else's left, I think when you look at the screen, this is Leon Shapiro, and I'm so appreciative and delighted that Leon has agreed to tell us a little bit about his Jewish story. It's just so much fun to get to know people and to get to know their, some of their backgrounds. For actually some of these things I know about Leon because Leon was the president of our congregation. And so when you're president, we have a pretty close and tight relationship, and you learn a lot of things and a lot of stories about people. And so he's shared with me a lot of these things, but I know that there are a lot of things he hasn't shared, and I truly can't wait to learn more. So, Leon, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for asking me.
My pleasure. So tell me, let's start. Let's talk about some simple. Well, I don't know if it's simple or not. You grew up here in Annapolis.
I did.
You're an old family here in Annapolis.
My family goes way back. So I'm a third generation Annapolitan. My mother was born here in Annapolis. My grandfather was not born in Annapolis, but he moved here as a very young man. He was probably in his early 20s when he moved to Annapolis from Havre de Grace. So there is a Jewish population somewhere in Havre de Grace because I think there's still family members there. And but he came here to Annapolis just to better himself and to get to find an occupation. And he had family members that were here in Annapolis, so he came to Annapolis to opened up a women's clothing store on Maryland Avenue, and he lived up above the store, and they operated this women's clothing store on the first floor. And he got married and raised his family in the upstairs apartment, and it was at 53 Maryland Avenue, and it's still there. I was just in the store this past weekend. It's now a decorating store, designer store. So.
Wait. So this is your mother's father?
Yes, and his name was Leon Strauss. So I was named after him. And my middle name is Strauss. So my name is Leon Strauss Shapiro.
How great! So your mom grew up here. How many siblings how many aunts and uncles?
Yes. So my mother had two sisters, so there were three daughters altogether, and they all were raised in born. They were physically born in the apartment upstairs because people weren't born in hospitals back then. So she was born in the upstairs apartment with her, and her two sisters were, and she had a sister named Leatrice. Who married Alan Ryder, so her last name was Leatrice Ryder.
Wow.
And
I know
she
that
had
name because they have the windows at KI, right?
Yeah. So my uncle Alan Ryder was very prominent at Knesset Israel, and getting Knesset Israel moved to Spa Road at Hilltop Lane.
Right.
So they named the auditorium after him. So, and then she had another sister, Bernice, and she got married and moved to Baltimore. But they're all passed away now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So, but we were, my grandfather was a member of Knesset Israel, his wife, and my grandmother, and my mother, and all my family were all members of Knesset Israel. Because we always like to say it was the only game in town at the time. It was the only synagogue in the area.
And
so they were all members of Knesset Israel. All their life cycle events took place at Knesset Israel. They were married there. They had their baby namings there. I was, and this was when it was downtown, of course, when they were growing up. But it moved, I think, around 64, 65, I think it moved to Hilltop Lane, Spa Road.
Right.
And I was born in 1964, so I only know the new building on Hilltop Lane.
You may have been one of the
You may
first
have been one of the
circumcisions
first
if that's in.
circumcisions, if that's in.
Yeah. So I was born over Passover. So I was told that they had to have special wine and special cups because it was Passover.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, my neighbor who's Jewish always told me that they went to the bris and they poured the wine into these cups, and the cups were for Passover, and the wine fell out of the cups because they didn't hold the wine well or something. So.
So what do you remember? Like, do you remember going to Hebrew school at Knesset Israel?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What was it like?
So, so I went to kindergarten at Knesset Israel. So I was in nursery school and kindergarten there, and I remember my teacher's name was Mrs. Bilderback, who was there for many, 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 many years. I think my siblings also had her, and then we went to Sunday school every Sunday. And then, closer to your bar mitzvah age, when you're probably 11 or 12 years old, you started Hebrew school. And that was run by Reverend Hammer, who was very influential in my life and probably most of the kids at Knesset Israel, because he was such a presence at the synagogue. And, he was well loved at Knesset Israel, and the kids loved him. He was strict. He could be very strict when he wanted to, but he also was very friendly with all the kids. So, and he was really beloved at the temple. So he taught me how to read Hebrew and taught me all of my lessons for how to daven and how to pray and all the prayers that you need to know. And then as it got closer to my bar mitzvah, he taught me my Torah portion, Haftorah, and he did it a little unusual.
How many kids were there in your class?
There was probably maybe 12 or 15 kids in our class.
Wow,
they weren't very big classes.
Well, but
is that
still,
big?
If he was doing all the tutoring and all the work, that's actually that's a fair amount for a guy person.
Yeah, and we would do it twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays after school around 3 o'clock for like an hour and a half every week. We had classes, and then as it got time closer to our bar mitzvah, he would tutor us individually, a couple times a week. And we were required to go to synagogue and make sure we had to go to synagogue to Shabbat service a couple times a month to watch the other kids that were being bar mitzvahed.
Do you remember any like hijinks or like antics that you used to do around the building, or were you just a good kid?
I was probably one of the better kids. I mean, I had some friends that were pretty, crazy and would push the limits with Reverend Hammer. So
I would love to have seen something like that. Like,
yeah,
running around on the stage on the in the auditorium or something like that.
Right. I mean, we'd love to go. But I don't know if a lot of people might be familiar with the bima at Knesset Israel, but it's made out of bricks with holes in the brick. Mm-hmm. There's like stacked every 2 bricks, and there's holes in it. And there's a room that sits behind the bima, and we always love to go behind the bima and just look out into into the sanctuary, because you couldn't really see, because it was dark in that room, so you couldn't see in the room, but you could see out.
No, I know exactly which room you're talking about. I've been back there.
It's very fascinating as a child to see that. It's a beautiful, sanctuary. Yeah. And it's really, it gives a lot of presence when you walk in, because it's very formal looking.
What do you think about Annapolis as a Jewish community now versus back then? I mean, how does it strike you now versus then?
So, I mean, it might be a little different because I don't have any children, right. But it doesn't feel as connected to me as when we were children, because My parents socialized with a lot of people at Knesset Israel. They that was their friends that they would play bridge with and go out to dinner with, um, and my friends were all my Hebrew school friends. I would say I had maybe a 50-50 mix of Jewish friends and non-Jewish friends, but most of my memories are with my Hebrew school buddies and friends,
That's great.
more than my non-Jewish friends.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I don't feel that families connect as well now. They don't. I don't know if they socialize as much as they used to, because it's a much larger world now, and the community is much larger, and so I don't feel like people connect socially like they used to when I was growing up.
Yeah, I hear you. I wonder about
It
that
might,
too.
and I might be jaded just because I don't have children, and maybe I don't
I don't know.
see it. I see it a little differently, but
Yeah. The
hard to tell.
it's hard to know. Like, I mean, it's especially when, but especially like when you grow up in a synagogue like KI, in which like that's the Orthodox synagogue, so your people's world was presumably around the, centered around the synagogue, and
Right.
and
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have. There was no JCC or anything like that. So the synagogue, we had a lot of extracurricular activities besides just religious at the synagogue for kids.
right,
So they did a lot of things for families, and my mother was very active in the National Council of Jewish Women and Hadassah, and so I always remember her doing volunteer work for the synagogue. It took up a lot of her time,
were,
and
were
it was
you
her life.
Orthodox? Like, I know the synagogue was Orthodox, but was your family Orthodox?
No, no. I mean, like I said, it was the only game in town, but we didn't grow up Orthodox by any means. We celebrated all the religious holidays, like most Jewish families did, but we're not. We didn't follow any of the
Did you keep kosher?
dietary
Right.
laws.
Did
We
you keep,
didn't keep kosher, no. But my next door neighbor kept kosher.
really?
So I was very familiar with the dietary rules back then. But
Was
and
there
he
a
was probably
Jewish
one
was
of the
there a
few.
Jewish neighborhood in Annapolis?
Yes, there's a couple Jewish neighborhoods when I was growing up.
Oh, really?
Um, Admiral Heights was a big Jewish neighborhood. There were a lot of Jewish families living in Admiral Heights. And our neighborhood, I live in the Germantown Homewood neighborhood of Annapolis, and they some people called it the Golan Heights of because it was a lot of Jewish people lived on our street.
That's so funny.
Um, there was a lot of well-known Annapolitans that lived in my neighborhood. So um,
Do you remember people at the synagogue keeping kosher and stuff like that, and you guys didn't, or was kind of like no one really keeping kosher, but it was still an Orthodox synagogue?
there were probably maybe a dozen families that kept kosher. I can't imagine there were much more than that.
No, it's just
Um,
interesting. Like nothing's changed. I mean, I don't mean this in a negative way towards KI. I just mean like it's always been a
right,
congregation which was Orthodox, but many levels, not many members of the congregation were strictly Orthodox. And
right.
I thought maybe earlier it was that way, but no.
No, it's as far as I ever remember, most of the families that we associated with were not Orthodox by any means.
Right.
I would say we were probably more in the conservative to reform
Right.
field than Orthodox. Um, there was probably, like I said, a dozen families that were strictly Orthodox, and the whole synagogue kind of was revolved around, set up for those 12, 15 families. But the rest of them really didn't care. But we sat separately. The men did not sit with women.
Do you remember
And
your mom or your dad having a problem with that?
no, we never had a problem with it. It was just a fact
Just
of
what it
life living.
was. Right.
It's just what it was.
Right. No, I get it.
And it was fine. In later years, when I was probably in my 20s or later, they started having mixed eating. But they always had a dividing wall.
Right.
So families that wanted to stay separated could,
Right.
but it was just a fact
Men
of
up
life.
front and families behind. So in other words, you could sit mixed if you were behind, but up front it was
Later
strictly
on.
men. Yeah.
Yes, yes, right. And the women always sat on the sides, never in the front, in the
Like
middle.
you remember any like any oneg Shabbats? I mean, like, do you remember them being or like luncheons? Do you remember like was it always the same type of food or something like that? Was it always egg salad and
It was always gefilte fish, and
gefilte?
they always had gefilte fish from a jar or something.
I will never
Yeah,
understand why people
every
like that
week.
stuff.
I don't mind gefilte fish. I probably because I they had it every week at synagogue, so I just grew to like it.
I will never understand. I just cannot stand it.
Well, yeah,
So
yeah,
fast forward a little bit. You get married and you connected with Temple Beth Shalom. What was it like what was it like making that transition from, even if again you personally weren't Orthodox, but still
right.
making a transition from at least a synagogue that was Orthodox to a synagogue that was liberal or reform. What was that
Yeah.
like for you?
So it's very interesting because as I look back at my years of Judaism, when I went to college, I kind of drifted away from Judaism, and I would go to synagogue when I was in college for like high holidays. There was a family. I went to college in Rochester, New York, and there was a family that kind of took me under their wing that was originally from Annapolis,
Oh,
and they would invite me to their house for Shabbat dinners. And they would, do some prayers before dinner, and so I always kept my Jewish identity even in college, but I wasn't very active in a synagogue or anything. And for many years after college, I never associated with Judaism. Excuse me.
it's okay.
So I so fast forward, I met my future wife Pamela, and she was not Jewish, and we got married, and she decided maybe 2 years or so after we got married that she was interested in converting to Judaism. So I never asked her to. It wasn't. I didn't even know she had it in her mind that she was interested in converting to Judaism at the time. So we decided that we would shop a synagogue to see what would suit her best. And I know she went to Knesset Israel, and she went to Kol Shalom, and she went to Temple Beth Shalom. And you had, as a matter of fact, when we first started, you had not arrived yet. And they told us, oh well, there'll be a new rabbi coming in about 6 months, so you might want to just wait. And if you're interested in converting, you might as well just wait and do it with the new rabbi because you'll want to just continue with him. So we did wait, and you came on, and Pamela fell in love with you and the conversion process that you
Fantastic.
offer because
Tell me about
it
I
was
know the story, but you tell it. Tell me about Pamela's conversion.
so I know she met with you, and she told, I think somewhere along the line she said, I don't know if this is what I believe in, I don't know if there's a place for me here in Judaism or at Temple Beth Shalom. And you told her that you'd be surprised that there is a home for you here if you're interested.
I was thinking
Some-
about something else. I wanted you to tell the story about her actual conversion.
Oh, and the interesting thing is, we really loved the conversion process because we got to go to the rabbis from all three temples offered classes, alternated
That's
classes, and
right.
so
Yeah.
it gave you a nice perspective of all the different the conservative, the Orthodox, and the Reform movement, which we really loved. So that was a great idea, and I hope that they can continue that
Yeah, we
in
should
the
do that
future.
again.
But so Pamela did convert to Judaism. So you were the one that I think brought up in her mind. So they were coming up with your annual I think it was the very first trip that you offered to Israel when you came to Temple Beth Shalom, and you had made a commitment that you wanted to go to Israel every 2 years, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
So as a temple trip. So we decided that we were going to go on the temple trip to Israel, and you, I guess, suggested to Pamela that you could do the conversion in Israel and make it really special. So, so we did do that, and Pamela in Tel Aviv you flew in at like 3 in the morning. Your plane landed, I think, and we decided to meet on the beach like at 6 in the morning, right at sunrise,
Right.
in Tel Aviv, right in front of the hotel, and she went into the Mediterranean and had her conversion, and the three of us were there, and there was nobody else on the beach. It was so early in the morning, there was nobody else on the beach. And she took off her bathing suit to do the mikveh, and I remember you were joking around with her, and you said, "Oh, swimmers!" Some swimmers were coming up, and she thought you were joking, and there really were swimmers coming by when she had her bathing suit on.
By the way, for anyone watching, I was at a good distance away at the time, but so yes. Just in case but Leon was there, and the mikvah, our mikvah, the natural waters, we use the natural waters of the Mediterranean, and she immersed herself 3 times in the Mediterranean. What an amazing way to do a mikvah is in the Mediterranean in Israel. Really.
It was so beautiful because it was sunrise, and we were in Israel, and we were in the Mediterranean Sea, right in Tel Aviv. It was really just so special.
That was
really
amazing.
Special.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Do you remember any other elements of that trip other than that?
So that trip, I will tell you, was really what immersed me back into Judaism.
Oh, wow.
It was because before that, I was really happy to show Pamela the ways of Judaism and introduce her to Judaism. It was really special to show her, take her to Israel. And just show her all the Judaism and from a new perspective that she didn't ever have before.
Right, the peoplehood of Judaism as opposed to just the traditions, because that so often is the element of Judaism which is so hard to transmit, to people who are converting to Judaism, because they see it as tradition and rules or elements of heritage, but they don't really see it as a people. And Israel enables a person to see, the peoplehood side of Judaism.
Yes. And the people that we went with on that first annual trip to Israel with the temple, we grew a connection and a bond with these people, and we became good friends with most of the people, and we still connect with a lot of the people that went on that first trip. Yeah. And it was a small group. I think there was only 36
or 17 of us. Yeah.
Was that what it was? I remember it was like a high number or something,
right.
But anyways,
18
so
including me. Perhaps it was 18 including me.
Right. So that trip to Israel really changed. I probably would not have eventually become rabbi of the Temple Beth Shalom if it weren't for that trip to Israel.
I'm going to assume you meant president, not rabbi.
I'm sorry. What did I say?
You said you become the rabbi of Temple Beth Shalom.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely not be rabbi.
Oh,
definitely not.
It's so. Well, let me ask you just one last question. Do you do you have any Jewish traditions that you do in your house that you find to be meaningful and special?
So I would say that right now what we do is we Zoom, with you, and I'm so grateful that we have Zoom and are able to connect with the synagogue electronically, since we can't be there in person. But I know you're opening up the synagogue now to in-person,
but still,
service, and just starting. But so we do that maybe once a month, and we of course have Passover Seder.
Break the
And
fast is one of your big ones too. I forgot about that.
yes, we do break the fast every year. We unfortunately couldn't do it this
Yeah.
past year, but yeah, we do a big break the fast with probably like 50 people here. And what my family, but the best one is Passover because my whole immediate family gets together, and we weren't able to do that this year because of COVID. But we plan on having Passover Seder this summer
That's
together. We're going to
nice.
do a Seder, yeah,
That's
because
nice.
we miss it and we love doing it, and we
There's a,
missed
by
two
the way,
years.
there's a tradition which says that if for whatever reason you can't do Passover on the date, they say, there's 1 month later you can do it. Now, granted, if you can't do it 1 month later, then you do it 3 months later. But the point is, there's a tradition which says you do it. There's a second opportunity to do Passover if you can't do it on
Okay.
the first one.
Well, we're going to do it a couple months later, but it's really my family's favorite holiday because we can all get together, and it's a tradition that we do every year. So,
That's great.
so.
That's great. I
I
can't wait to hear
I
about it.
forgot to tell you I was going back to in my history. I actually had some visual aids that I was going to show you, and
Ooh, let's see.
forgot. I don't know if you can.
Oh yeah, I can see. Wait, hold on. Oh yeah, that's great. Wait, let me
So
just expand it.
this is a picture of me on my graduation day from kindergarten
Oh my
at
gosh,
Knesset Israel.
that's so
And this
great.
is Rabbi Rosenblatt shaking my hand,
Oh
who was the
wow.
the rabbi that was at Knesset Israel for many, many, many years.
It's
So,
so hard to see you in that picture. You know what I mean? It is like
yes, I have
what else?
there's some newspaper clippings. I don't know how well they're going to show up,
Let's
but
see. Festival of Lights. Wait, go a little bit higher with it. Perfect. But now a tad lower. All right. So but how am I going to find you in this?
yeah. So I think, where am I? I'm the little skinny, scrawny kid. Oh, I'm on the bottom in the white shirt.
Oh, over to the right. Yeah, there you go. I see you. You went the wrong direction with your finger because you're looking at it the wrong way. No, I see you.
I'm on the opposite.
That's so
I'm
funny. Oh my God.
on the floor with the white shirt. So that's yeah, that's a Knesset Israel too.
Oh,
So
that's great.
they tried to advertise and put notices in the Capitol. At the time it was called the Evening Capitol, and and then here's another. My mother saved all these, and
I'm
I've just
glad she
kept them all.
did. What was this? A Hebrew school class or something?
This was kindergarten too.
Oh my God.
So it's this a graduation photo. So
Oh my God. That's so great. That is so great.
um, I think I don't know if I'm showing up. Oh, I'm on the very far end in the corner, the tall kid on the top.
I see you. I totally see you. Any of
Is it
these
right?
people, anybody else that member, live in the community still?
Yeah, I think a couple of them do. Um, Stacy Wallman, who's an attorney here in town, she
Right.
lives here. Harry Liggum is in the picture. He lives here in town.
Right.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
It's so nice to see these historical things about Annapolis. I really thank you
Yeah.
so
I
much
mean,
for sharing that.
I love Annapolis. I grew up. I loved Annapolis, but Annapolis is a very different town than it was back then. I was ready to leave Annapolis when I was growing up after college, but it drew me back, and I love being here now. So, and I love my association with Temple Beth Shalom. It's just
Well,
has changed my life.
I'm so well. I mean, to say you and Pamela are treasures to us is a complete understatement. Um, so I'll tell you what. This has been amazing, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate having the chance to talk with you. And
Thank you.
Leon, I got news for you. This is going on YouTube. So and but you should be proud of yourself because I mean, what a great conversation. I'm sure people are gonna love watching this. So
Thank you.
Thank you to
It
everyone
was a
watching.
pleasure being here. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.